Welcome to Climate Action Now, part of the Great American Build Tour. Please maintain social distance and keep your mask on for the duration. We ask that you turn off your cell phones, and we invite you to take your seats at this time. Our program will begin shortly.
And meeting this moment is about more than preserving our planet. It's also about providing a better future for all of us. We are resolving to take action, not only our federal government, but our cities and our states all across our country.
Because regardless of where we live, we share a common belief that Georgia can do more, can be more for all of us.
We're going to be bold and visionary, rethinking America's infrastructure and creating millions of jobs in the process.
But there is a fight across this state and across this country for the moral fabric of everything we believe in, from equality to racial justice to climate justice.
And we need all Georgians to recognize this deciding moment, this inflection point.
We can make America the #1 producer of clean energy on Earth, and Georgia the #1 producer of clean energy in the American South.
Please welcome to the stage our MC for the evening, host of the Big Tigger Morning Show on V103 FM, Big Tigger.
How you doing? What's happening? I got a clap. Nice to see you all. Welcome to everyone who is here this evening and everyone joining us, watching us stream wherever you are. If you're in your home, your office, or school, we appreciate you being here today and tuning in. I want to give a special thanks to Climate Power and the League of Conservation Voters for hosting us all. Yes, indeed. We are here today, Climate Action Now. My name is Big Tigger. I'll be your MC for the afternoon. And I'm here because Georgia's at a make or break moment for climate change. We are. This is important to our home. This is important to our city. This is important to our country. So I'm going to need everybody to lean in. These weeks are an essential time to drive momentum for climate action. Action means jobs and justice for us all. Congress has an opportunity to deliver for me, to deliver for you, and to deliver for everyone by passing the Build Back Better agenda. The voices you're going to hear from today and this afternoon will speak to the importance of this moment. They are folks who have been doing long-term work on the ground here in Georgia. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our very first guest, Stacey Abrams. After serving for 11 years in the Georgia House of Representatives, 7 as minority leader in 2018, Abrams became the Democratic nominee for the governor of Georgia. Over the course of her career, Abrams has founded multiple organizations devoted to voting rights, training and hiring young people of color, and tackling social issues at both the state and national levels. Please join me in welcoming Stacey Abrams.
Thank you. It is such an honor to be here with Climate Power and with the League of Conservation Voters. In 1995, I had a summer internship, my second one with the Environmental Protection Agency. The summer before, in 1994, I was in North Carolina working for the Office of Environmental Criterion and Assessment, which is just as interesting as it sounds. But the following year, I was able to leverage my senior thesis in college to get the job of my dreams, and that was to serve as an intern in the newly created Office of Environmental Justice. I grew up in Mississippi near Moss Point. I grew up in Gulfport. Moss Point was an area that was facing chemical degradation because of plants that poured waste into communities, in toxic air and in the water. We were a state away from what was known as Chemical Alley in Louisiana, where the rates of death and disease were astronomical compared to the size of the population. And so for me, the conversation about the environment is one that's been a long time in building. It's not the thing I'm most known for, but it is something so central to me that during my tenure in the legislature, I made it a point to introduce and support multiple pieces of legislation to act on our climate, to act on our environment. It also matters to me because I grew up on the Gulf Coast, and I remember the hurricanes. I was born after Hurricane Camille, but I remember Hurricane George and Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Frederick. I remember driving home in 2005 to check on my parents who had been victims of Hurricane Katrina, praying all the way there that it wasn't as bad as we believed. And those extreme climate events are not relegated to the Gulf of Mexico in Mississippi and Louisiana. Here in Georgia in 2018, Hurricane Michael ravaged our state. And the reality is extreme weather events are only going to increase. The reality is that the environment is not fixing itself, and that wishing does not make it so. We have to act. It is our obligation to take our power and fix our climate and save our world, and that's why we're here today. And the reality is, 27 years after I walked into the Office of Environmental Justice in Washington, D.C. in Anacostia, I'm standing on a stage knowing that we are inches away from some of the most major investment in climate action in our history. You see, with Build Back Better, with that agenda, we can invest billions of dollars in actually addressing the human cost of climate action. We can help improve the lives of families, making certain that not only we help prepare them for extreme weather events, we can do the work of making sure they have sustainable jobs that pay living, if not better wages, to save our planet. And when you couple that with the physical plant work that will happen with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, together we can transform the United States and we can take our rightful place as a leader on climate action. Now, many of you know me from conversations about voting rights, something that's a little important to me. But the reality is I care about voting rights not simply because of the act of casting a ballot. It's about making choices. It's about setting an agenda. It is about shaping the world we want to have in this country and around the world, beginning with where we live. And as a resident of Georgia, as a person who calls Georgia home, I believe that Georgia should be at the forefront of what is to come. You see, Georgia's already in the top 10 states when it comes to solar energy. We're in the top 20 on so many other metrics, but we should be number one. Because in the Southeast, we know what we're doing, and in Georgia, we can get this work done if we invest in our state. And we have extraordinary leaders who are doing this work. And let's be clear, this is bipartisan work. Climate action doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. It doesn't care whether you live in Atlanta, in Athens, in Ackworth, and it doesn't care if you live in Albany. Climate change is real, it is happening, and we can either use it to help ourselves or we can give in. In Georgia, we don't give in. We give our best. And that is why these two bills are going to be critical in transforming our state and changing our nation. But it doesn't happen if we don't lift up our voices, if we don't do the work of telling our legislative leaders, especially those in the Senate, that action has to be taken now. We've got to call our state reps and tell them that at the state level, there's work to be done. We've got to call our U.S. representatives and tell each and every one of them, regardless of who they represent, they speak for all of us. And it is our obligation to tell them we want to build back better and we want the bipartisan infrastructure framework to pass. Together, we can invest in the future. But what's even more important is we can act now. Usually this is a theoretical conversation. We're usually talking about what we wish could happen, what we think should happen, what might happen, but we have the ability, yes, the power to make it happen. In the next 5 weeks, we can have conversations with our friends, with our allies, with our family, with people we don't really like that much, but who need to know better. And we need to talk to them about why climate action matters to them. Because too often we relegate this to a conversation about stream buffers or weather events. This is about jobs. This is about the ability to wake up in the morning and go to work and know that when you come home that night, you've made a living wage and you can take care of your family. This is about not having to flee every time there's a storm warning. And more importantly, it's about having somewhere to go when there is. It's about building the infrastructure we need to sustain the economy we are building, and it's about looking to the future and knowing that right now, if we do nothing, by 2100, which sounds like a long time away but isn't that far away, by then the state budget of Georgia will cost us $34 billion per year to address climate inaction. And when you compare it to our current state budget, 80 years from now, we will be spending more than we spend right now on everything we pay for in the state. Hear me clearly. In 2021, our state budget is $28 billion. By 2100, the cost of climate inaction will be $34 billion. That means cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, cuts to everything that we rely on. Or we can invest now and reap the benefits. From rural Georgia, where we can invest in energy investments that will help them withstand extreme weather events, where we can save our peaches and our peanuts and our pecans, but where we can also invest in technology that helps center pivot irrigation save water and save money. We can make certain that the next time we have disaster in South Georgia or we have extreme weather events in North Georgia, that we are ready to respond because we've anticipated our needs. Together, Georgia, together, America, we can do this work. We can vote for leaders who believe in us, and we can work to ensure that this legislation that is essential to our future passes this year. We can't wait any longer. I've been waiting for almost 30 years to see us reach this moment. And together, if we claim our power and we do our part, we will invest in a future that sees us and serves us all. So help me, everyone. Let's make sure climate power is on the agenda and these bills pass our U.S. Congress. Thank you so much.
Please welcome back Big Tigger and environmental justice and public health advocate Daniel Blackman.
Yes, indeed. How are you, sir?
My brother. It's
Good to see you,
man.
Always good to see you. We're here for a really important cause this time, though.
That's right.
You, sir, have been doing a lot of long-term work in our community to address climate crisis right here in Atlanta. What inspired you to get started, involved in climate and what's going on with our planet?
I think for me, and I think you know this better than anybody being in the cities you've had a chance to work in, whether it's Atlanta or Detroit or D.C. or Chicago, when you see our community time after time struggle with the challenges not just of racism, but environmental injustice. I mean, Stacey Abrams just left the stage and talked about Hurricane Katrina. And I remember 2005, I remember seeing a mass migration of folks come from New Orleans and from Houston and from Mississippi, and I didn't understand why. And, you know, I've always been an activist, man. I've always been on the front line of civil and human rights in our communities, but I felt that environmental justice didn't have a voice at the table. And there's a quote that says, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I felt like our community was on the menu for a long time, and it was up to us to be able to address issues like climate change and environmental justice, because if we can't breathe, man, we can't live.
We had a small backstage conversation about just that. How would you characterize, or would you characterize it as apathy in our community?
Yeah.
And if so, what is making us so apathetic towards doing something, being aware, being in the moment about this climate crisis?
I think it's more so people's inability to understand how to make it personal, right? Like when we tell people to recycle, if there's not a landfill in your backyard, it's hard for you to remember. If you don't smell the stench of 1 million pounds of, you know, food from the World Congress Center, you don't deal with it. People in Atlanta are paying for a nuclear facility in Augusta, Georgia, and in Waynesboro, Georgia, and we don't see it, but we pay that light bill every month. And we don't ever question when that light bill goes up, or we never question when things happen that we don't understand. So I think it's more so a lack of exposure and understanding of how it directly impacts us. And, you know, I hate to use the example, but you look at what happened to George Floyd, and he was saying his last words were, "I can't breathe." And asthma has crippled our community for decades, and we haven't been able to breathe for a long time because our children suffer in our community at asthma rates 7-8 times the national average, so we have to make it relatable.
Indeed, indeed. That's why situations like this are important. That's why we're here. The clean energy sector is one of the fastest growing job creators in the country, especially manufacturing. How have you seen the clean energy affect the economy here in Georgia?
Before I can even talk about Georgia, man, I mean, you know, I got to shout out Akon and Brandon Martin, man, who has Akon Lighting America and the Black Sunrise Fund. They're co-founders of getting more of us involved in solar. So as it relates to us, because the Black Sunrise Fund deals with affordable housing, clean energy, creating jobs, I've seen Georgia in cities like Atlanta, Athens, Savannah create solarized programs locally, right? Because utility companies don't necessarily have to, you know, make the decisions to go forward, right? Like there's another quote that I'm big on that says it's hard to get a man to understand a thing if his salary depends on him not understanding it. So it's like if you work for a utility company and your job is to just get your shareholders the highest return, you're not thinking about the community. So I've seen a tremendous grassroots movement, man, in the home of Dr. King, folks on the ground that have literally worked to create more solar, to fight against coal ash, to help folks weatherize their homes. A lot of people in Southwest Atlanta are in homes that are not weatherized. So if there's energy seeping out through your windows or under your doors and you don't know it, then you're basically using more air in the summer and more heat in the winter, and that's hurting folks, especially our senior citizens and folks on a fixed income. So our job is to be able to get people motivated to just start with their block. If we can get people to start with their neighborhood, then we can change a whole city.
Yeah, wasting money and energy at the same time if your house is not weatherized. That's the problem.
Yeah, man.
let's sticking on solar for a hot minute. Like, there are people who are interested in it.
Yeah.
And, we hear sometimes that there are, like, subsidies and maybe or maybe not. But I think the overwhelming belief is that it's expensive to actually get this solar energy that will help save the planet.
Yeah.
Is that accurate, or?
It's more expensive to not have a planet. I mean, it's really simple, because if you think about it, and that's why I love what I do, because people always talk about the cost, right? And when you look at life expectancy in the U.S., black folks are living 10 years less than our white counterparts, right? Because of the quality of air and the quality of water. You look at Flint, there are hundreds of Flints around the United States. You look at cities like Atlanta, Los Angeles, Detroit, Washington, D.C., air pollution is crippling, our community. So the cost to weatherize or to go to get an electric vehicle, yeah, it's more expensive. But I think the long-term benefit is for, our children and our grandchildren and our neighbors and our families to be able to live here longer and to breathe clean and quality air. And, any day of the week, man, I think that's a fair trade-off.
Amen, amen. Poll after poll has shown that a majority of Americans, including here in Georgia, support Congress taking action to address climate change and to transition to a clean energy future. Why do you think the law, why?
Just say it, man. Just say
is it too much like right? Does it make too much sense? If we say, oh, this is kind of what we see climate change, we see what's happening, why is it so hard to get a bill passed that says this is what's happening?
You got to follow the money. You got to follow the money. When I ran for office in Georgia, I took a pledge to not take any money from fossil fuel companies, because I understand the crippling effect of industries being able to give massive amounts of money to political campaigns. And so I think people have to understand that a lot of the decisions are made pretty much are rooted in two areas. One, we live in a capitalistic society, so we don't always think people, planet, profit. We think people, profit. I mean, we think profit, right? We don't think about people and the planet. And when you are driven by profits, it's hard for you to be able to see the larger picture. But the second part outside of just that corporate responsibility is, capitalism exists, but also politically, we just have to be more aware and astute. Like this infrastructure bill that Ms. Abrams just mentioned, I don't think people understand. This is a once in a generation type of bill, right? This can lift people out of poverty. It can help us to fight climate change. Like this is literally the first generation that can end poverty, but the last generation that can end the climate crisis.
Wow.
So if we can end poverty and fight climate change, I think we'll be in a good position. But we have to understand that this $1.2 trillion and this resolution that was passed, $3.5 trillion, we need to understand how that makes sense to us, because black buying power in Georgia alone is $118 billion. So if we think about how to invest that money, we need to understand that 50 years ago, we owned 18 million acres of land as a people. Now we own less than 2 million acres of land. So we need to look at that buying power and invest in land, invest in solar, and invest in things that can help us to benefit in the long run.
In the long run. But why is it so important for Congress to act on climate change now?
I think the main reason that they have to do it now is because we've put it off for so long. I mean, come on, man. I'm not going to tell our ages up here on stage, but
I'm 22.
All right, then that means I'm 18, brother. But no, so I think I heard about the ozone layer in the Amazon rainforest back when I was a kid. Like, the Captain Planet was, on, in the 90s. So it's like you look at things now, and we've been talking about it for a long time. But when you talk without action, then you put people in the position that we're in now. If Congress doesn't act, which is our last line of defense, policies, because we're living in a time now where if the government does not get involved and put things in place to secure our environment, then we're going to be in a tough place. And I think Congress has to act, because cities like Atlanta will not be able to sustain itself. If Congress doesn't act now, to put this into perspective for everybody that likes to go to South Beach, in 50, 60 years, South Beach may be underwater because of sea level rise. My family's from Barbados in the Caribbean, so I understand sea level rise. I understand what extreme weather that's crippling Houston, Texas, and other areas in the Gulf Coast. So we need to understand that if Congress doesn't make the right decisions now, these cities we love, these areas we grew up in that we love to vacation in and we love to give back to, they may not be there when our kids and our grandkids are trying to enjoy and have those same experiences.
Indeed. Daniel, we appreciate your hard work and dedication, and you heard it now. Climate action now.
Right now.
And now, please welcome Executive Director of Georgia Conservation Voters, Briante McCorkle, and Just Energy Program Manager for the Partnership for Southern Equity, Alicia Scott.
Hello. It's so good to be here with every single one of you and to sit here with Alicia. Alicia, we've been putting in work here in the state of Georgia.
Yes, we have. The work never ends. Not in the South.
Ends. Not in the South. So we just heard all this wonderful discussion from Daniel Blackman about this opportunity that we have. It's truly a lifetime opportunity to bring investments here to our communities in Georgia. I would love to explore how some of the disparate impacts of climate change have impacted the health of Black and Brown and Indigenous Georgians.
Wow, I could talk for an hour, but I think we only have about 15 minutes to get this out. Black communities are the first and the worst hit when it comes to the effects of climate change. Everything from contaminated groundwater because of fossil fuel overusage to poor air quality to urban heat islands. That's something new that I've learned in the last year. Urban heat islands and the effects of climate change and heat-related illnesses are disproportionately found prevalent in the Black communities and in our low-wealth communities and indigenous communities of color. Sea level rise will affect Black communities on coastal Georgia much sooner and far worse than any other communities. Low-wealth communities, they don't have any form of redress, and they don't really have the voice, which I'd like to say is money in U.S. politics, to really advocate and get real help when it comes to the effects of climate change. Right now, you can best believe that the most impacted groups in these fires that are going on out west are going to be our indigenous communities. They are getting hit hard. There aren't very many public services that service our reservations and our indigenous population. And then our rural communities, our rural low wealth communities and communities of color, they're being impacted just terribly right now from all the effects of climate change. So the data is out there. We just have to find it and amplify it.
Absolutely. It's long been discussed that communities of color are on the front lines of current environmental injustices. And as the climate worsens and we experience this heat and this wildfire and these droughts, that it's going to be communities of color on the front lines, just like you said. The urban heat island effect, as you talked about, is really important here in Atlanta. And I also would love to talk about how we can ensure some of this funding, maybe more than some of this funding, goes to the communities that are hardest hit by the climate crisis and pollution. How do we make sure that they're prioritized as we transition to a clean energy economy?
Oh, wow. So you're talking about the Justice 40 Initiative. So the Justice 40 Initiative, for those of you who don't know what that is the Biden-Harris administration's executive order on ensuring that all agencies in the federal government, any funding that is allocated, that 40% of those efforts and 40% of that funding goes to benefit marginalized Black communities, low-wealth communities, communities of color, but mostly historically marginalized communities. And we all know that means Black. They are the most historically marginalized, as well as our indigenous communities. That funding, there's a $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill. It just passed in the Senate, I think on August 11th, and we're waiting and hoping for a vote by September 27th on that. This could be huge. 40% of all of those funds being directed to marginalized Black communities is the first time in history there's been legislation aimed at restorative justice and environmental justice. So let's think about that for a minute. Never before in the history of the U.S. has anyone ever passed any type of legislation specifically targeting restorative justice for Black communities and historically marginalized communities. So this is huge. This is huge. And how do we ensure that money gets to the people it's intended to benefit? Well, one, we have to stay in close contact with our state legislators. We have to stay in contact with our congressional delegation, which is our state senators and our House of Representatives. If you don't know who those people are, then you need to look them up right now and find out who those people are. The second thing is we have to make sure the organizations that are working in the communities and with the communities have the capacity and the funding to service the communities that they're advocating for. There's a whole lot I could say about how we ensure that happens, but the bottom line is it's enforcement. We know that the Trump administration gutted the EPA, gutted all enforcement, took out protections, gutted and basically canceled NEPA. So we now have a chance to put all those things that were undone under our previous 4 years of oblivion and turn the page in American history. I think Bernie Sanders said this is the most comprehensive legislation package since FDR's New Deal. That's kind of huge. You know, the New Deal, what a lot of people don't realize is the New Deal created Social Security. So we got a lot of work to do. There's a lot baked in to the budget reconciliation package, but most importantly, we have to amplify our voices to make sure that the funding that's coming down, directed by Justice 40, actually goes to benefit the communities that need it the most. And the only way we can do that is that we stay connected. One, we got to do things like register to vote, make sure we get the right people in office. That's one of the things we have to do. But we also have to pay attention to redistricting. Remember, the census is supposed to help allocate funding. So we need to have our eyes on that because that is going to drive, when these funds start to flow, that's going to drive where they go, large in part. So mostly stay connected to your local legislators. All politics are local, so stay focused on those people, pay attention, and get involved in any community grassroots organization that's talking about Justice 40. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, Google it. And before I stop here, there is a Justice 40 Accelerator. So you can go to justice40accelerator.org. This is a collaboration of multiple well-funded nonprofits who work in the communities, and they are going to be acting as everything from fiscal sponsors to a re-granting institution to help grassroots groups build capacity and deploy these resources on the ground. So I don't know about the rest of the states, but Georgia's ready for this money.
Hey, we are ready for resources. Ready for resources. You know, you and I just finished working on an op-ed to really bring home this example of how the Build Back Better agenda and all the funding that will be flowing from that will end up in communities and why Justice 40 is so important. We talked a little bit about DeKalb County and some of the water infrastructure issues they were having there. Do you want to share anything about that?
Do I want to share anything about DeKalb County and their, it's been about, 20, I think I was in high school when the EPA came in and sued them and said, fix your sewer infrastructure. It was sometime, along there. We won't talk about dates tonight, but, oh my goodness, yes. So the Justice 40, and the infrastructure and budget reconciliation package that's out there, that $3.5 trillion, stands to push forward the funding that local governments need to upgrade their sewage, water, all of their infrastructure. All of the public services and the public utilities, there's money out there for it. So governments can't make excuses anymore about why they can't fix a 30-year-old sewage leak. We could have called Roto-Rooter by now to help DeKalb, but that's stories for other days.
Right, and DeKalb County illustrates, like, we have counties that know that they have these issues, and one of the biggest challenges to fixing these issues has been having the resources to do so. And so the Build Back Better agenda really delivers exactly where communities like DeKalb County need. DeKalb County is mostly an African American community, and not only is it a sewage overflow issue, right? We have sewer going into the South River, which is a wonderful water resource. It serves mostly African American communities and lower income communities, flows through from Atlanta all the way out through the coast. So it's really important that we stop those sewage overflows. But then also people are experiencing incredibly high water bills, lots of water bill discrepancies stemming from this inefficient water system. So the county knows that these have been issues and has needed funding to be able to address it. So as you said, now they're getting these resources. Now hopefully there'll be no more delays in getting these issues addressed.
And it's just, listen, when you're talking about groundwater, here and specifically in Georgia, we discovered that, X amount of tens of thousands of picocuries of tritium leaked into the groundwater. Down in Savannah, we've detected tritium in the water, all over Georgia. And for those who don't know what tritium does, it affects the reproductive health of women. So in case you're wondering why we're having issues with fertility rates, it's literally in the water. But this is environmental racism, and you'll find that there are water problems, groundwater problems all over in the Black communities. And you'll find this all over Georgia. So this Build Back Better plan has enough robust policy in it to right the wrongs of 160 years. I'm just going to call it, since emancipation of the enslaved Africans, 160 years of environmental racism, of dirty energy, polluted water, pollution, poorly planned cities. What we'll find is that these systems have been set up purposefully to continue the marginalization for generation after generation after generation. So now we'll be able to hold legislators accountable once this package is passed. And so it's important that we get that done.
Absolutely. And so let's expand a little bit on holding legislators accountable, right? Because the dollars will ultimately come to local governments, from the state to local governments. And so we talked about contacting your state legislators. Should we also be talking to our county leaders, our city leaders?
Absolutely. We should be talking to our county leaders, our city leaders. We want to talk to our state legislators because, for those of you who don't know, there are 19 states who have been well funded by the natural gas industry, which is one of our big polluters in a myriad of different ways. Fracking, high methane, all sorts of natural gas and school bus pollution. It's harmful to kids. We could go on for hours about that, but 19 states have just passed preemptive legislation that is preventing cities and counties from adopting clean energy resolutions and clean energy laws. That's kind of huge, and that is on the onus of our states. They've skipped right past Congress. They've skipped over local. So they've hamstringed the local governments from actually passing clean energy resolutions. And why is that a problem? Well, we just had the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change issue another report that issued a code red for humanity. The planet is too hot, and we are about to hamper our ability to just survive as a species. This is big. This is huge. Siberia's burning, California's burning, my home state. I hope my family's okay out there. There are more fires burning globally now than we have ever seen in recorded history. There are more floods simultaneously happening. I think after they put the fires out in Turkey, a flood came and washed everybody away and just killed hundreds. And so this is a problem. Our oceans, our ocean life is dying. Seafood is boiling. Anybody still buttressing up dirty industry doesn't care about humanity or the planet. Plain and simple.
Well, Alicia, thank you so much. This is always a big topic, but it looks like we're finally making some headway with the Build Back Better agenda, with the Justice 40 initiative. We have resources coming to communities, and now it's on us to make sure that our local leaders, our state leaders, do the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And now, please welcome to the stage environmental activist and sustainability expert, Ashley Renee.
Hey y'all, I'm Ashley Renee. First of all, I want to thank Climate Power and the Georgia League of Conservation Voters for bringing the Climate Action Now Great American Build Tour to our dope city of Atlanta. Very excited to have you guys all here to witness this powerful event. Very, very grateful. There is so much that we need to do, so much work that needs to get done. But first of all, and first and foremost, I really want to thank all the people who are out there listening and learning and really just taking the time to do the work, the very important work that it's going to take to make this planet better, to build a better place for us all to live in. Emphasis on the all, because it shouldn't just be for some people. We should be building a better future for everyone. Now, it's not often that you get so many inspirational leaders all in one place. Inspirational leaders who are working tirelessly to build a better, sustainable future. Now, for those of you who don't know me, sustainability is kind of my thing. It's what I do. It's what I live for. I'm very passionate about it. And it's through my work that I hope to inspire other people to live more sustainable lives as well. I try very hard to live a life that's rooted in making the world a better place through changing the way we consume things. And I try to inspire my community to make sustainable changes too, so that they can hopefully inspire their friends and their family to do the same, and then hopefully it creates a domino effect that impacts the whole world. Make no mistake, we need all hands on deck. We need everyone to do their part because the climate crisis is getting worse. But we can make it better. This is our time to make it better. For my baby, Beyond, he's 7 months old. And it's our time to make it better for all the babies out there, like especially for them. Okay? This is not the time to be silent. This is not the time to not fight. We have to fight. We need all of you in this fight. We need you to be loud because climate crisis is here and it's hurting everyone, but especially communities of color. Yes, that's right. Communities of color are being disproportionately impacted by climate change. The climate crisis is here in our state. The climate crisis allows big oil and gas facilities to poison and pollute Black and brown neighborhoods, which damages the futures of generations to come. I can't have that. I'm not okay with that. The climate crisis is bankrupting families that can't afford to fix their homes from floods and fires. It's hurting all of us. It's putting people's lives at risk. It's threatening their futures because of these severe weather events that only seem to be getting worse every single month. Farmers' crops are wilting. Workers are having to suffer through sweltering temperatures. And kids are having to fight through diesel fumes just to get to school. That ain't life. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't. We can have climate justice. We can have racial justice. We just need to band together to create that future that we want to see. And that's why we're here today. We want you to take a stand. Stand up and tell your lawmakers that you will not abide silence when it comes to climate action. Tell your lawmakers, demand your lawmakers to give you real answers about what they plan to do about this climate crisis. What are they going to do about it? We need to tell Congress to take real climate action that's going to bring jobs and justice to Atlanta, to Georgia, to all over the country. We need Congress to actually act. It is time for them to do the right thing by voting for President Biden's Build Back Better budget. The time is now. We need to help people rise up who have been laid low. The time is now to help get people into jobs that are actually going to fix this climate crisis. The time is now to make sure that the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the food that we eat is actually safe for our babies so that they can live long, healthy, and full lives like they deserve to. We don't have a moment to lose. We have to act now. This is our fight. Now is not the time to be silent. Now is the time to be loud and proud and demand bold climate action that's actually going to bring hope to our home here in Atlanta. So I want all of you to say it with me. I'm ready to act. I know you are. So let's get to work and let's get it done.
Please welcome back to the stage our MC, Big Tigger.
It's been a pleasure being here this afternoon with everyone watching and everyone here in attendance. We got a chance to listen to some special conversations, some special speakers, and it all reminds me of one major point. Atlanta is a town of people who make things happen. Georgians know better than anyone, and I mean better than anyone, that change takes a lot of hard work and hustle. Just look how we helped change the game in D.C. It's time for Congress to adopt some of that ATL spirit and get to work fixing what's broken. The climate crisis is here, and we cannot turn our backs. We need to seize this moment and turn it into opportunity. If there's one takeaway from tonight, is that now is the time to help families struggling to pay the bills. Create new, good-paying jobs for people who are ready to get to work. And lift up people who have long left behind, because this community deserves a helping hand. Climate action is community action. It's action on justice and jobs, and it's actions Georgians need right now. We expect Congress to be as bold as Atlantans are every day, and it's time for them to go big. ATL is counting on them. Georgia is counting on them. The American people are counting on them. Let's get it done. Thank you for being here. Turn up climate change now.